The distress beacon had been sending its signal for 17 hours. It was a simple message, repeated again and again across the void of space. "Help! We need help! Someone please come!" The hammer of Sol dropped out of hyperspace with a flash of blue light. The massive warship, painted in dark gray and black, moved through the darkness like a predator entering new hunting grounds. On its hull, the flag of United Earth caught the distant starlight. Captain Park stood on the command deck with his hands behind his back. He was a tall man with a face that showed no emotion. Deep scars ran across his knuckles, marks from battles fought long ago. His eyes, dark and steady, watched thee as it flickered to life. What they found made his crew go silent. The alien vessel was destroyed. It had been a diplomatic cruiser, a beautiful ship made of materials that looked like crystal and light. Now it drifted in pieces. The hull was shattered like broken glass thrown across the black ocean of space. Emergency lights blinked weakly from sections that still had power. Escape pods floated among the wreckage, spinning slowly in the zero gravity. "Life signs?" asked. His voice was calm and quiet. Lieutenant worked at her tactical station. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with sharp eyes and quick fingers that danced across her controls. 47 signatures, Captain, all weak but stable. They are being held in some kind of containment." "Held?" "Yes, sir, they are not in the wreckage," pointed at they are there. The image shifted. Behind the destroyed cruiser, hiding in the shadow of a nearby moon, sat another ship. This one was ugly and brutal, built from dark metal covered with weapons. It looked like a creature waiting to bite. "Slaver vessel," said. Her voice became cold. "They are the ones who sent the distress signal." Understood immediately. They had not called for help. They had attacked the ship, captured its passengers, and then activated the distress beacon. They were using it as bait. Any rescue ship that came would find the waiting for them. More prey, more slaves to sell. They were parasites of the galaxy. They did not build or create anything of value. They simply took from others. They attacked weak ships, captured the passengers, and sold them to whoever would pay. For decades, they had operated freely because no one was willing to fight them. The Galactic Federation called them a problem. They wrote reports about them. They passed resolutions condemning their actions. They expressed deep concern. But they did nothing. "They think we are here to negotiate," said Commander, the first officer. She stood beside, her arms crossed. Standard Federation response to a situation like this would be to open communication, discuss terms, maybe pay a ransom. "They think we are like the others," added. Soft, careful, afraid. Said nothing for a long moment. He simply watched the ship sitting there in the darkness, waiting for its new victims to make contact. They had heard stories about Earth, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had. They knew that humans came from a planet so dangerous that most species could not survive there for even a single day. Earth had extreme temperatures, violent weather, and countless predatory animals. Its oceans were filled with creatures that could swallow a person whole. Its smallest insects carried diseases that could kill in hours. But they did not believe these stories. They thought humans were exaggerating. They thought Earth's reputation was just propaganda designed to frighten others. After all, how dangerous could a species really be if they joined the peaceful Galactic Federation? They were about to learn the truth. Tactical analysis, ordered. Pulled up the data. The vessel is a modified cargo hauler, heavy armor but slow, weapons designed for disabling targets, not destroying them. They want to capture ships, not blow them up. She paused. They have approximately 80 crew members. Small arms, mostly stun weapons. They are not prepared for a real fight. They have never needed to be, said. Their victims always surrender. Nodded slowly. He thought about the 47 being held on that ship. They were a gentle species. They had delicate blue skin, large dark eyes, and thin wings that they used for gliding on there. They were artists and musicians. known across the galaxy for their beautiful creations. They were not warriors. They had no way to fight back. That was why they had chosen them. Turned to face his crew. The men and women on the command deck looked back at him, waiting. They already knew what was coming. They had served with him for years. They understood how humans dealt with situations like this. No hails said, no warnings, no negotiations. A smile crossed his face, small and sharp like a knife. Battle stations, continued. Prepare boarding teams. We go in fast and hard. Primary objective is the rescue of all hostages. Secondary objective is the capture of command staff for interrogation. He paused. Tertiary objective is the complete neutralization of all hostile forces. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as officers rushed to their positions. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Down in the armory, soldiers started putting on their combat gear. On the vessel, Captain watched his sensors with a mixture of excitement and greed. The human ship was larger than he had expected, but that just meant more cargo space, more slaves to capture, more profit to be made. He ordered his crew to prepare the capture nets and stun cannons, standard procedure for a new victim. But then something strange happened. The human ship did not stop. It did not try to communicate. It did not turn around or try to escape. Instead, it accelerated. It came straight toward them at full speed, weapons powering up, hull lights going dark. For the first time in his long career, felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear. The humans had received the distress signal. They had come to help. But they had not come with kindness. They had come with something far older and far more terrifying. They had come with the fury of a captain had captured many ships in his career. He had raided cargo vessels, passenger transports, and even a few small military escorts. He knew how prey species behaved. They talked. They begged. They offered money and resources in exchange for mercy. Eventually, they always surrendered. The humans did none of these things. Stood in the command center of his ship, watching though with growing confusion. The human warship was not slowing down. It was not sending any communication signals. It was not trying to negotiate or threaten or bargain. It was simply coming, fast, silent, direct. Try to contact them again, ordered. His communications officer, a nervous young name, shook his head. They are not responding, Captain. All frequencies are silent. It is like they cannot hear us. They can hear us, said quietly. They are choosing not to answer. This was not how things were supposed to work. For decades, had operated in this sector of space without any real opposition. The Galactic Federation knew about his activities, but they were too afraid to act. The cost of fighting was always higher than the cost of looking away. Had grown comfortable. He had forgotten what it felt like to be the one being hunted. The human ship crossed the distance between them in minutes. It moved like a missile locked onto its target. At the last moment, it spun around and matched velocity with the vessel. The two ships floated side by side, close enough that could see the individual weapon systems on the human hull. Then the docking clamps fired. They punched through the outer armor with a sound like thunder. The whole ship shook. Emergency alarms began to scream, grabbed his console to keep from falling. They are breaching us, shouted. They are cutting through the airlock. Stared at the damage reports flooding his screen. The humans had not asked for permission. They had not even announced themselves. They had simply attacked, like animals going after prey. But that was wrong, thought. Humans were not animals. They were members of the Galactic Federation. They followed rules and laws and diplomatic protocols. The sound of cutting torches echoed through the corridor outside. Plasma tools slicing through metal, getting closer every second. All crew to defensive positions, screamed into his communicator. Stop them at the breach point. Down in the main corridor, Sergeant led his boarding team through the melting airlock. 12 soldiers in black tactical armor, their faces hidden behind dark visors. They moved in perfect formation, covering each other with smooth efficiency. Was a veteran of many operations. He had fought pirates near Mars, cleared terrorists from a space station orbiting Jupiter, and led the assault on the command ship during the incursion. He knew how to take a ship. Behind him, Private First Class Osara kept her weapon ready. She was the youngest member of the squad at 23 years old. Her hands were steady. Her heartbeat was calm. Training had replaced fear long ago. Sora had joined the Marines after watching her colony burn during the incursion. She had been 16 years old, hiding in a basement with her younger brother, listening to the sounds of destruction above. When rescue finally came, it came too late for her parents. She had promised herself that she would never be helpless again, and she had promised that she would always answer when others called for help. The airlock fell inward with a crash. Beyond it, a group waited with their weapons raised. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were small and red, designed for seeing in darkness. They opened fire immediately. Blue stun bolts filled the corridor. They hit the Marines and bounced off their armor like rain hitting stone. The weapons were designed for capturing prey alive. They could knock out with a single shot. They could not even slow down a human. Raised his hand and made a single gesture. The Marines attacked. They did not shout or scream. They did not make threats or give warnings. They simply moved forward and started killing. Their weapons fired in short, controlled bursts. Each shot was precise. Each target fell. They had never seen anything like it. Their other victims had always run. They had always begged. They had always surrendered. The humans showed no mercy. Private Hand cleared the left side of the corridor with cold efficiency. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke, but his actions said everything. 3 fell before they could even aim their weapons. Corporal covered the right side. She had grown up on a farm in the Korean countryside, learning to hunt with her grandfather. She had killed her first wild boar at age 12. Were easier. Sara moved with her squad, her weapon finding targets with mechanical precision. She felt nothing. No anger, no hate, no satisfaction. Just the calm focus of a predator doing what it was born to do. The line broke in less than 30 seconds. The survivors turned and ran, screaming into their communicators for help that would not come. Checked his squad. No casualties, no injuries, he nodded once. Move forward, he ordered. Secure the cargo hold first. That is where they are keeping the squad advanced through the ship like ghosts. They used the shadows, the corners, the blind spots. Every time they tried to set up a defensive position, the humans appeared behind them. Every time they thought they were safe, they died. Watched the reports coming in and felt his world collapse. His crew was being eliminated room by room. The humans were not taking prisoners. They were not accepting surrender. They were simply erasing everything in their path. He had made a terrible mistake. The stories about Earth were not exaggeration. The humans had not evolved on a gentle world of cooperation and peace. They had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every single day. They had learned to survive by becoming the most dangerous thing on their world. And now they had brought that danger to his ship. Looked at the door to his command center. Soon the humans would come through it. He had no doubt about that. He picked up his weapon with shaking hands and waited for the end. The cargo hold was located in the center of the ship. It was the most protected area, surrounded by thick walls and heavy doors. This was where they kept their most valuable cargo. This was where they kept their slaves. Corporal Han reached the cargo hold first. He moved silently through the final corridor, checking for enemies. 2 guards stood at the entrance, their weapons held loosely. They were not expecting an attack from this direction. They died without making a sound. Stepped over their bodies and approached the cargo door. It was sealed with a heavy electronic lock. He attached a small device to the control panel and waited. 30 seconds later, the lock clicked open. The door slid aside. The smell hit him first. It was the smell of too many bodies in too small a space. The smell of fear and suffering and despair. Had experienced this smell before on other ships in other missions. It never got easier. He stepped inside. The cargo hold was large and dark. Metal cages lined the walls, stacked 3 high. Inside each cage, prisoners huddled together. Their blue skin was pale and dirty. Their large, dark eyes stared at with terror. Their thin wings were pressed flat against their backs, a sign of extreme fear in their species. There were 47 of them, men, women, and children. Some had injuries that had not been treated. Some had not been given enough food or water. All of them had been treated like animals. Removed his helmet. They gasped. They had expected another monster. Instead, they saw a human face. Young, tired, kind. Had studied the language for 3 weeks during the journey. He knew he would find survivors. He knew they would be afraid. He wanted to be able to speak to them in their own words. "You are safe now," he said slowly. His pronunciation was not perfect, but it was clear enough. "We are from Earth. We heard your distress call. We came to help you." They did not move. They did not seem to understand. After everything they had experienced, kindness was the last thing they expected. An elderly female pushed her way to the front of her cage. Her wings were torn and damaged, probably from trying to resist her captors. Her face was lined with age and pain, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. "You came for us?" she asked in Galactic Standard. Her voice was rough from disuse. "Yes," said, "we came for you." "But why?" The elderly shook her head. "We are nothing to you. We are not your people. We have nothing to offer you." Thought about how to answer. In the galaxy, everything was a transaction. Species helped each other because they expected something in return. Alliance, resources, political advantage. Pure altruism was almost unknown. But humans were different. "You called for help," said simply, "so we came." The elderly stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, tears began to fall from her large, dark eyes. She had given up hope. She had accepted that no one was coming. And then, from the darkness of space, these strange creatures from had appeared. Not to trade. Not to bargain. Just to help. Began opening the cages. Private Osara arrived moments later with medical supplies. She moved from prisoner to prisoner, treating injuries and checking vital signs. She did not speak much, but her actions communicated everything. A young child, maybe 6 or 7 years old by human standards, reached out and touched Sora's armored hand. The child was thin and weak, with bruises on her arms from rough handling. "Are you a monster too?" the child asked in a tiny voice. Sora knelt down to look at the child directly. She removed her glove and held out her bare hand, letting the child see that she was flesh and blood, not some terrifying machine. "No," Sora said gently. "I am not a monster. I am here to take you home." The child stared at Sora's hand. Then very slowly she reached out and held it. Outside the cargo hold, Sergeant was receiving reports from the rest of the squad. The ship was almost completely secured. Resistance had collapsed after the first few minutes. Most of the remaining crew had either surrendered or hidden themselves in corners, hoping to be overlooked. They would not be overlooked. "Captain, the cargo hold is secure," reported over comms. 47 survivors, some injuries but no fatalities. "We are beginning evacuation procedures." Captain's voice came back immediately. "Good work, Sergeant. What is the status of the command staff?" Checked his tactical display. The command center is still sealed. The captain and approximately 15 crew members are inside. They have barricaded the door. "Can you breach it?" "Of course, sir." "Then do so. I want the captain alive for questioning. Everyone else is at your discretion." smiled behind his visor, understood Captain out. He gathered his squad and moved toward the command center. The corridors were quiet now. Bodies lay where they had fallen. They had learned too late what happened when you attacked humans. Back in the cargo hold, helped the elderly to her feet. She was weak and had trouble walking, so he supported her with his arm. "My name is," he said. "What is yours?" The elderly replied, "I was the cultural ambassador on our ship. I was bringing art and music to share with other worlds." She looked around at the destroyed cargo hold, at the cages that had held her people. They took everything, our ship, our art, our freedom. "They will pay for what they did," promised. Looked at him with her ancient, tired eyes. "Your people are very strange, human. You came to save us, but you did not come with kindness. You came with fire and death." Nodded, "That is true." "Then what do you call this?" Gestured at the Marines helping the other, treating their wounds, carrying those who could not walk. "If it is not kindness, what is it?" Thought about it for a moment. "On Earth," he said finally, "we have a saying, kindness is not always gentle. Sometimes kindness is protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Sometimes kindness is making sure that evil does not go unpunished." He helped toward the exit. "We are kind to you," he said. "We are not kind to them. There is a difference." Considered this as they walked. It was a strange philosophy, brutal and tender at the same time. But as she looked at the soldiers around her, at the care they showed for her people despite the violence they had just committed, she began to understand. The humans were not monsters. They were guardians. And guardians did not show mercy to those who hurt the innocent. The door to the command center exploded inward. Metal fragments flew through the air like knives. Smoke and fire followed. Sergeant was the first one through. He moved low and fast, his weapon sweeping left and right. Behind him, his squad spread out in a practiced formation, each soldier covering a different angle. The inside opened fire immediately. Blue stun bolts flashed through the smoke. One hit directly in the chest. He felt the impact through his armor but did not slow down. The bolt could not penetrate the advanced plating. He returned fire. 3 fell in the first 2 seconds. The rest tried to find cover behind consoles and chairs, but there was no cover from the humans. Private Sara came in from the right side, flanking them. Corporal came from the left. They fired with cold precision, dropping targets one after another. In less than 30 seconds, the command center was silent. Looked around at the bodies on the floor. 15 had been inside. 14 were now dead. 1 was still alive. Captain lay against the far wall, his weapon dropped, his hands raised. He had been shot in the leg and could not stand. Dark blood pooled beneath him. His small red eyes were wide with terror. "Please," said, his voice was high and desperate. "Please, I surrender. I will give you anything you want. Money, information, anything." Walked toward him slowly. He did not lower his weapon. "You surrender now," said. His voice was flat and emotionless. "But you did not accept surrender from your victims. You did not show mercy to them." "That is different," protested. "They were cargo, they were profit, this is just business. You understand business, yes. All species understand business." Stopped in front of and looked down at him. "No," he said, "not all species understand your kind of business." He turned to his squad. "Bind him and treat his wound. The captain wants him alive for questioning." Felt a small wave of relief. He would survive. He could negotiate. He could find a way out of this situation. That was what he was good at. That was what he had always done. 20 minutes later, Captain arrived on the ship. He walked through the corridors without expression, stepping over bodies as if they were not there. Behind him came Commander, carrying a data pad. They entered the command center together. Looked at, who was now bound to a chair with his wound bandaged. The captain tried to meet his eyes but quickly looked away. His gaze was like staring into the eyes of a predator. "Your navigation logs said, Where are they? Hesitated. The navigation logs contained everything, every route he had traveled, every station he had used, every partner he had worked with. If the humans got that information, his entire operation would be exposed. I can negotiate, said quickly. I have information that is valuable. We can make a deal. Did not respond. He simply waited. The silence stretched on, began to sweat. The console, he said finally, pointing with his bound hands. Third panel from the left. The password is 72BLUE-BLACK9. Went to the console and entered the password. The screen lit up with data, maps, coordinates, names, dates, a complete record of decades of slaving operations. Captain said quietly, "You need to see this." Walked over and looked at the screen. His expression did not change, but his hands tightened into fists. They have more ships, explained. A fleet of 12 vessels operating across this sector and holding facilities. 17 of them spread across 7 systems. She paused. There are thousands of captives, multiple species. Some have been held for years. Absorbed this information in silence. The Galactic Federation had known about the operations. They had known for decades. They had written reports and passed resolutions and expressed concern, but they had never acted. The political cost was too high. The military risk was too great. It was easier to look away. Did not look away. Contact Fleet Command, he ordered. Transmit all coordinates immediately. Request deployment of the 3rd Expeditionary Force. His eyes widened. Sir, that is a full combat fleet, 20 warships. If we deploy them to this sector, the Federation will have concerns. There will be political consequences. The Federation always has concerns, said. They have been concerned for decades while they captured and sold thousands of innocent people. Their concerns have accomplished nothing. He turned back to look at, who was watching the conversation with growing horror. We are not the Federation, continued. We do not write reports, we do not pass resolutions, we act. Nodded slowly. I will transmit the request immediately, sir. She left the command center to send the message. Remained, standing in front of like a statue of judgment. You have made a mistake, said. His voice was shaking now. A terrible mistake. The consortium has allies, powerful allies. They will not accept this. There will be consequences for Earth. His expression did not change. Your allies, he said calmly, have already abandoned you. Your fleet will be destroyed within the month. Your holding facilities will be raided and your captives freed. Your leadership will be arrested and tried for crimes against sentient beings. He leaned closer. And you, said softly, will spend the rest of your life in a cell, knowing that everything you built was torn down by the species you thought was soft and weak. Began to understand, finally, how badly he had misjudged the humans. He had thought they were like the other Federation species, civilized, careful, afraid of conflict. He had thought their reputation as was just stories exaggerated to frighten others. But looking into his eyes, he saw the truth. Humans were not civilized despite being. They were civilized because they chose to be. Beneath the diplomacy and the laws and the peaceful cooperation, the predator was still there, sleeping, waiting, ready to wake up when the situation demanded it. And had woken it up. He had hurt innocent people. He had expected no consequences. He had been wrong. Turned and walked toward the exit. At the door he paused and looked back. Sergeant, he said, take the prisoner to the hammer and secure him in the brig. Make sure he is comfortable. He has a long journey ahead of him. Nodded, yes, Captain. Left the command center without another word. Behind him sat in his chair and stared at nothing. His empire was ending. His life, as he knew it, was over. And somewhere in the distance, the 3rd Expeditionary Force was already preparing to launch. The humans were coming. And they were not coming with kindness. 3 months passed. In that time, The galaxy watched in shock as humanity moved with a speed and determination that no one had expected. The Third Expeditionary Force arrived in the sector within 2 weeks. 20 warships, painted in the dark colors of the United Earth Navy, spread across the region like a net closing around prey. The fleet tried to fight, they lost. 12 slaver vessels were destroyed or captured in a series of brutal engagements. The humans did not negotiate. They did not offer terms. They simply arrived, demanded surrender, and attacked when surrender was refused. Most of the time, surrender was refused. They could not believe that anyone would actually challenge them. They learned otherwise. The holding facilities were raided one by one. Marines descended on each location with the same cold efficiency they had shown on ship. Resistance was eliminated. Captives were freed. Records were seized. By the end of the 3rd month, the consortium no longer existed. The final count was staggering. 4,312 captives had been liberated. 12 species were represented, including, and several others that the Federation had assumed were extinct. Some had been held for decades. Some had been born in captivity and had never known freedom. The was blockaded. Their leadership was arrested. Their infrastructure was dismantled. Their slaving operations were ended forever. The Galactic Federation was horrified. Not by the slavery. They had known about that for years. They had chosen to ignore it because addressing it was inconvenient. No, they were horrified by the humans, by what they had done, by how quickly they had done it. A special session of the Federation Council was called. Representatives from 47 species gathered to discuss the situation. The topic was not the liberation of slaves or the end of the threat. The topic was the human problem. Ambassador No stood before the council, her dress uniform crisp and perfect, her expression calm and patient. She was a career diplomat, trained to handle exactly this kind of situation. She had prepared for this moment. The accusations came immediately. "You have destabilized an entire sector," shouted the representative, a tall being with 4 eyes and translucent skin. "You violated sovereign territory," added the ambassador, slamming his massive fist on his desk. "You have set a dangerous precedent," the delegate declared. "If one species can simply attack another without council approval, what prevents total chaos?" Listen to all of them. She did not interrupt. She did not argue. She simply stood and waited until they had finished speaking. Then, when silence finally came, she stepped forward. "For 43 years," she said, her voice calm and clear, "the consortium operated openly in Federation space. They attacked ships. They captured citizens. They sold sentient beings like products." She paused. "For 43 years, this council was aware of their activities. You filed reports. You passed resolutions. You expressed deep concern." Her eyes swept across the assembled delegates. "And for 43 years you did nothing." No one responded. The silence was heavy and uncomfortable. "Distress signals were sent," continued. "Hundreds of them, thousands. Victims called for help as they were captured and sold. Their families begged for rescue. Their governments pleaded for intervention." She shook her head. No one came. No one helped. No one acted, because acting was difficult, because acting had costs, because it was easier to look away and pretend the problem did not exist. Took another step forward. "Humanity heard those signals. We heard them for years. We are sorry that it took us so long to act. We are sorry that we did not come sooner." Her voice hardened. "But we are here now, and we have done what needed to be done." The delegate rose from his seat. "You call this justice? You killed hundreds. You destroyed ships and facilities across 7 systems. We freed over 4,000 slaves," interrupted. "We ended a criminal enterprise that had operated for decades. We brought safety to species that had lived in fear." She looked directly at the. "What have you done?" The had no answer. From the back of the chamber, another figure rose. It was the elderly that Corporal Han had rescued from the cargo hold. Her wings had healed slightly, though they would never fully recover. She walked slowly to the speaking platform, leaning on a staff for support. The chamber went quiet. "I was held in a cage for 17 days, said. Her voice was soft but carried clearly through the silent room. "I watched my friends and colleagues be evaluated like animals. I watched children cry for parents who could not help them. I gave up hope." She turned to face the council. When the humans came, they did not negotiate, they did not discuss, they did not offer payment or make deals. Her eyes met for a moment. "They killed our captors, they opened our cages, they carried our wounded to safety, they asked for nothing in return." Moved closer to the council seats. "You call the humans dangerous, you call them violent, you call them a threat to galactic stability." She shook her head. "But I call them something else." She pointed at the assembled delegates. "I call them the only ones who came, the only ones who answered, the only ones who cared enough to act." Turned back to face the room. "The humans were not kind to that is true, they were brutal and merciless and terrifying." She paused. "But they were kind to us, they bled for us, they died for us, they asked for nothing." Her voice grew stronger. "Perhaps you have misunderstood what kindness means." She bowed toward, a gesture of profound respect and culture. Then she turned and walked back to her seat. The council session continued for several more hours. Debates were held, resolutions were proposed, diplomatic language was carefully chosen. In the end, nothing was done to punish humanity. The votes were not there. Too many species remembered being abandoned. Too many remembered sending distress signals that were never answered. And too many had begun to think that perhaps the humans had the right idea after all. Far away from the council chambers, back on Earth, Private Osara sat on her balcony inn. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Her discharge papers lay on the table beside her. Her service was complete. Next to the papers was a letter. It had arrived 2 weeks ago, written in careful galactic standard with a few characters mixed in. It was from a young girl, one of the children Sara had helped carry from the ship. The letter was simple. "Thank you for coming, thank you for saving us, thank you for being kind." Sara read it again, for the 100th time. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her pocket. She would carry it for the rest of her life. Humanity had answered the distress call. They had not come with the gentle kindness that the galaxy expected. They had not come with words and negotiations and careful diplomacy. They had come with something older, something fiercer, something that the galaxy had forgotten existed. The kindness of wolves who protect their pack. The kindness of fire that burns away corruption. The kindness that says, "You are not alone, and those who hurt you will answer for what they have done." The galaxy was beginning to understand. Kindness was not always gentle. Sometimes kindness had teeth. And Earth's had plenty of teeth to spare.